Hello guys, this is your friend and we are back with a new fanfic. Which is what if Hiruzen actually cared about Naruto, part 2. And if you enjoy this fanfic then please press the like button and subscribe to my channel for more fanfic like this. And now let's start the fanfic. It felt strange to take a seat in this arena, Sarutobi mused. After all, 5 weeks ago this place was used as an ambush for Orochimaru and the forces from Suna and Kumo. The attempted invasion had changed several leaf policies. After all, the walls here were based on those in Konoha. Everyone had seen how easily large summons had brought huge sections down. A terrifying jolt of reality. For one, foreign ninja weren't allowed inside Konoha. Diplomatic meetings took place in one of the buildings in the converted, mock-up. Tournaments like this one took place in the refashioned arena. Foreign traders took up free stalls here. Villagers from the Leaf flocked here on trading days. Now that they had to leave the village, it seemed like a more interesting task, and trade had actually picked up, even with the more inconvenient arrangements. Perhaps, with time, that would fade. Today, strange as it was the true final round of the Chunin selection exam. All the remaining nations in the tournament understood precisely the reasons for the delay, even if the civilians and others had less of a clear picture. The daimyos in attendance had large contingents of bodyguards, still more than a bit spooked that Orochimaru might return from the grave. Having personally set the body alight, and kept the fire going for quite some time, Sarutobi knew that his one-time student was truly dead. He looked at the match board, and thought it strange and wonderful. 6 of the 10 finalists were from Hidden Leaf, and 5 of them were rookies. Normally few genin teams found their Junin sensei willing to nominate them after receiving so little experience, but 6 of the new teams had been entered and all had done respectably. Perhaps it was time to look at this long-standing tradition. It held that rookies should rarely participate, needing more time to grow, but conversely that few genin should attend more than 2 of these tournaments in order to build their experience level. Sarutobi had long wondered if the 2 prongs were more than a bit at cross purposes. Those who did not pass after 2 tries would have to wait for merit promotions later, as the Chunin selection exam was primarily to honor young geniuses, and to make the various hidden villages seem greater than they might be because of a powerful genin here or there. Politics. Keeping the civilians and daimyos entertained, this had once perhaps served its purposes, but now Sarutobi had been less interested in maintaining tradition for tradition's sake. Perhaps the foreign tournaments held some value, as Sarutobi believed was possible from a well-constructed tournament, but they were insufficient for handling Chunin promotions. 95% of all Konoha Chunin had risen in level thanks to a merit promotion, not as a result of this tournament. That was a broken system. Sarutobi's eyes tracked down to the proctor. The test was ready. Ahem, thank you for attending. Today's matches have been pre-selected and the combatants notified. They have had 2 months to prepare for this day, so we should expect some marvelous battles today. Sarutobi smiled as the first Konoha ninja took the field. Nara Shikamaru slumped out of the waiting area while Kento of the grass walked like a ninja should. Shikamaru was, hopefully, setting his opponent up for a surprise. The battle began. Kento drew a katana and wiped its blade with a cloth. Sarutobi recognized the gesture as a standard from grass country. That blade was poisoned. With what? Only Kento knew for sure. Shikamaru had a harder task. In order to win, he could not be hit, and needed to take down a kenjutsu specialist. It seemed a boring match, until people realized, as Kento did not, that Shikamaru was avoiding a fight in order to waste his opponent's energy. The boy was obviously planning something. And, then, as Kento's anger got the better of him, a shadow struck out from Shikamaru's body, and Kento was stuck. Shikamaru raised his left arm, and Kento's right arm rose of its own volition. Shikamaru manipulated his own arm, as if he were carrying a sword and about to commit seppuku. Kento began to sweat as his sword turned against him. Do you concede? Shikamaru asked. Yes. Yes, I concede. The proctor declared Shikamaru the winner. The boy released the shadow, wobbled a bit, and then slouched off the field. Kento, shaken by his improbable loss, secured his blade and walked off, a bit more humble than he had come onto the field. Now, Inuzuka Kiba vs Hyuga Banta. Sarutobi was surprised that this Hyuga had made it into the finals when Mishi, the Hyuga's latest pride and joy, held a better reputation. He watched with interest as the Hyuga took up the standard gentle fist forms. Why had the Hyuga gone through so much tumult only to insist on the old methods, the old traditions, while stood stock still with his partner animal at his side? Both were waiting for the other. Good. They had been trained in caution, especially important for one as impetuous as the Inuzuka boy could be. Finally it began. The dog ran forward, as if instructed, and then the Inuzuka. Sarutobi lost a bit of interest as it turned into a decoy and attack routine. When the Hyuga turned to face his human opponent, the dog would nip as his calf muscle. So the Hyuga would have to deal with the dog, then Kiba would strike. It went on and on, the Hyuga using his gentle fist, but finding a dog's tenketsu system utterly alien when compared to a human's. He didn't know how to stop the vicious, but rather amusing, little animal. Finally, Kiba managed a good solid punch. The Hyuga was taken down by a taijutsu practitioner who was less skilled, less refined than he was. And the Inuzuka had held nearly all of his clan attacks in reserve for future matches. Yes, he was becoming formidable. Winner. Inuzuka Kiba. Now, we offer Suna's Tamari vs Leaf's Uzumaki Naruto. Sarutobi smiled at this. While the matches were supposed to be random, Sarutobi had scheduled this random match himself. Naruto, his prized student, had never battled against another wind user. He wanted the boy to have that opportunity in a safer venue than a battlefield. But it seemed that the wind mistress did not wish for anything to be done safely. She obviously resented still being held by the leaf, and her likely status as a permanent hostage. Of course, she was still legally a Suna citizen until the various daimyos and Sarutobi hammered out a written agreement. But the girl was angry. Her opening move against Naruto was opening her fan to its fullest size and batting a powerful wind attack at him. She didn't think to wonder why the blonde guy just smiled, and did not bother to get out of the way. The blast of air tore through the arena, and when it struck the floor, it sent up rock and stone and everything else. When the dust cleared, Tamari had mounted her fan and was preparing to leave as no one could survive such an attack. Sarutobi smiled and wished he had wagered more on Naruto's eventual win. This was as dramatic as it got. The young ninja was still standing in place and smiling. A semicircle of untouched floor lay in front of him. He was making a point, but how? Nothing Naruto knew was a wind defense as this seemed to be. Indeed, while wind techniques were known for being destructive, what Naruto had come up with, especially his Wrath of God technique. Sarutobi's face broke into a full smile. The boy had done it. That horrifying technique, Wrath, used his control over air to separate air and leave a void in its place. The boy could create a vacuum. An opponent punching into such a void would receive horrible frost burns and would have blood vessels exploding under his skin. Had Naruto ever positioned a wrath attack over an opponent, the air would be pulled from his lungs instantly and the air bubbles in the bloodstream would increase in size as the pressure outside decreased. Within moments, the person would be a bloody mess, the most horrifying individual technique Sarutobi had ever heard of, again invented by mistake. But now, it seemed Naruto had learned to mold a thin layer of a vacuum, like the outer shell of a large gumball, all around the area where an opponent might attack. Such a thing could absorb wind, fire, anything, so long as Naruto could maintain this wrath shield. Sarutobi looked at his fellow Kages and counterparts from the other villages. None of them knew what had happened, or why. With such a technique, the boy was unstoppable. Naruto had just showed everyone he would eventually rise to cage-level power, and none of them yet realized it. The boy might be a bit ill-mannered, in an amusing way, but he understood discretion. He would never tell anyone how to replicate his techniques. The Hokage also doubted that Naruto would ever use the Wrath technique directly on another shinobi unless he meant to kill them. This day, this public in attendance had witnessed the pronouncement, "A legend will rise here." A chill ran down the Sandame's spine. Naruto's father had used Fuinjutsu to become unstoppable, a complex art that took him almost 7 years from start to a usable model. Naruto had developed this wrath power by accident and then kept playing with it until it really was worth something. To have the power over individual molecules of air, to move them, to create temporary vacuums or pockets of great air density, perhaps dense enough to stop projectiles, the Hokage wondered, this was the power of a true wind master. And no one recognized this master work. Not yet. With luck, Naruto's true strength would remain hidden for some time to come. Anonymity equals safety, after all, to a ninja. Temari, on the arena floor, was the most confused. Her most powerful attack had hit everywhere around the kid, but not the target himself. How? She didn't get the chance to be confused for long. Naruto ran to her and began attacking with his fists and feet. The first punch, Temari screamed a bit, as the punch not only hurt, but it somehow covered her upper arm and back in deep, bleeding cuts. A kick to her belly had her doubled over in pain. There was blood everywhere. A few more blows, and she wasn't willing or able to get up again. Even her battle fan had been destroyed by the boy stepping on it. Sarutobi nodded as he watched. The boy's own taijutsu style, not so different from the academy version, included fashioning wind in his fists and feet. The punches hurt, and the wind tore at the same time. To perform this technique was a testament to the boy's mastery of the air. He formed up these thin air blades just a moment before the blow landed and dispelled them just after they'd struck. It was a marvel of timing and control. Indeed, his control would permit him to fight like this for almost an hour against training dummies before his body would feel the stress. The proctor had not heard a forfeit. But he knew when a battle was ended. The blonde boy had stopped attacking and was waiting to be declared the winner. The proctor did so, and then Naruto himself knelt down and helped to pick up his opponent and carry her to the medic nins. None of the wounds were fatal, although Sarutobi expected the boy could have made them so, had he been in the proper state of mind. The gesture, contrasted against Temari's mean-spirited first and only attack, drew applause. The proctor waited for the noise to clear before declaring, "Now, we have Aburame Shino versus Sato of the Waterfall." The match was an unfortunate pairing for the young Aburame. Sato was a gifted user of water techniques and genjutsu. The Aburame had some taijutsu skill, but relied on his kikai bugs. And bugs were easily drowned. A few minutes later, Shino conceded defeat. Our final round 1 match. Ko Moegi vs Hirofumi Kunio from River Country. Sarutobi sat forward for this one. It had been a long time since an independent shinobi, like this Hirofumi had made it to the finals. Most ninja, but not all, came from hidden villages. There were still clans out there who trained their children in the ninja arts. This student must be truly gifted to have made it this far with just clan techniques and training methods. Even the river daimyo had been impressed enough to sponsor the young man's spot. Ko had excellent chakra control, better than the Haruno girl, and was becoming a fairly talented field medic. This Hirofumi, no one knew what he specialized in. His opponent in the prelims was weak and Hirofumi hadn't had to give much away. The battle started at close range. Ko attacked with chakra scalpels. Hirofumi used metal gauntlets of his wrist and arms to deflect the attacks and cause damage on his own. Then Hirofumi withdrew a short staff from his back, a man after Sarutobi's own heart, and began to wail on Ko. The kunoichi jumped away and went to medium-distance attacks. She specialized in ranged weapons and explosions. Ko rained down kunai on her opponent, and a few of them had small explosive notes attached. The battleground became a war zone. Dust everywhere. The battle still continuing although the spectators could only hear clanging and banging. When the dust cleared, it was clear that the two had reached a stalemate. Khan had been pinned by the short staff her opponent wielded, but she had a kunai with an exploding tag stuck in the young man's thigh. Neither could win without dying. It is a draw, the proctor declared. Neither would progress. But perhaps Sarutobi would have someone inquire of the young river ninja if he would like to join the Leaf forces. He was talented, and Sarutobi would appreciate more bow users among his ninja. The second rounds were drawn and the pairings revealed. The Nara would go against the Inuzuka. And Naruto would go against the water user from Waterfall. A 30-minute break was announced, to permit people to get refreshments, but, in actuality, to facilitate additional gambling on these matches. When the tournament resumed, Inuzuka quickly overwhelmed the Nara. The shadow user had basically depleted all his chakra in the first round, and was forced into a quick concession. The second battle was a good bit longer. Sarutobi knew that Naruto was playing with this Sato as he had never gone up against a true water-oriented ninja. Sure, the boy had a few water techniques, mostly for defense, but he was curious. In any case, it looked like a good battle. Naruto showed that his most recent training with Sarutobi had finally come in useful. It was a strange commentary that Naruto, who loved techniques that caused mass damage, had to be taught how to disarm an opponent who wasn't as strong as one of the Monkey King's subjects, rather than just destroy them. Sato didn't know how lucky he was. The boy had quite a bit of skill. He was able to form a small water dragon using just the barrel of water he'd been permitted to situate in the far side of the arena. Similar provisions were made when the tournament was held in other countries, if needed. Water users shouldn't be disadvantaged just because the tournament was in the desert, for example. Naruto tested the boy's water techniques, and then let himself be caught in a few genjutsu just to experience them, and then, finally, after faking a look of exhaustion, went on the offensive. When he struck this time, he did not draw blood. When he parried a water blast, he used his wind to freeze some of the water. Then he picked them up and threw them back. The water user couldn't dissolve them, and manipulate them. One of the small spikes struck Sato in the upper arm. When Naruto went in for the submission move, the boy attacked Naruto with a half-abortive ice technique of his own. Naruto played with it, examined it, and then sent Sato unconscious. Naruto was using this tournament to learn, even in a crowd like this. Remarkable. The final match was obvious, the Inuzuka versus Naruto. Still another 30-minute break was called, and the betting was furious outside the arena. When the audience calmed down, the proctor started this last match. It was a bit amusing to Sarutobi. This was Naruto and Kiba's first pairing at the examination to become genin, as well. The fight, mostly in taijutsu, showed how both had radically improved since then. The Inuzuka's sensei, the former head of the Hunter Nin, had done much to calm the boy and focus him. He thought better, and fought better. Both of them were transformed since their student days. The Inuzuka was nearly a match for Naruto in straight taijutsu. Had Naruto been using his elemental attacks, well, the story might be different, but the boy knew better than to use such a thing on a fellow loyal Leaf ninja. The match was truly well coordinated until the Inuzuka upped the ante. The boy was surprised when Naruto fought well against the Inuzuka clan technique of the beast clone. The little puppy became a second, rather feral-looking Kiba. Naruto dealt with both of them once this happened, being forced to show more of his true skill level. One couldn't best a 5-foot-tall monkey and then fail to beat two Chunin-level ninja. And when they tried to execute their twisting and twirling technique, they hit a cyclonic whirl of air that tossed them both away from Naruto. That was a second new technique that the Sandaime hadn't seen yet. The boy was keeping secrets, it seemed, even from his sensei. Good, the boy was learning to be a ninja. He asked for help when stumped, but kept some things in reserve to surprise and delight at the opportune moment. The match ended when the puppy ran out of enhanced chakra and basically fell asleep. Kiba broke his discipline and went to the aid of his animal. The Inuzuka would have to be broken of such a tendency soon. The proctor declared Naruto the winner. There was much groaning, and much rejoicing as various winners and losers went to claim and pay their bets. The arena began to empty. But the 10 challengers returned to the floor. Sarutobi finished his ballot. He had felt generous this time. He voted to award Chunin rank to Naruto, Kiba, Shikamaru, Shino, the Waterfall Ninja, and the River Ninja. He collected the ballots from the other cages and the daimyos. The ballots were unanimous for a few, and split fiercely on the rest. Naruto and the Inuzuka were clear Chunin. Shikamaru barely scraped enough votes, which would suit him just fine. Sato claimed enough, but the River Ninja did not. That was a mistake to the Hokage's mind. It seemed like a bit of discrimination against a ninja not from a hidden village. Shino had 6 of 13 votes, so no vest, which was also the case for Ko Moegi. Tamari somehow got 5 votes, even from a single vicious assassination-style attack, more politics, it seemed. The Hyuga got 5, while all the others got 4. Some ballots had called for everyone to be made Chunin. Obviously some daimyo had done very well with his betting, or had been drinking for a rather long time. The Hokage walked down to the floor of the arena and handed out 4 Chunin vests. As the sad River Ninja walked away, the Hokage gestured him over. I believe you deserve promotion, young man. Thank you, sir. If you should ever wish to serve and train in a hidden village, the Leaf would welcome you. Thank you. But I have to return to my clan. The daimyo has promised them aid in exchange for my service on his guard, but, if the offer were still open in a few years. The young man was good. He knew how to negotiate with powerful men. I will send you a warrant. Provided you have grown in strength, and have stayed clear of legal entanglements, I will permit you to join the Leaf no matter who is Hokage then. You plan to step down, sir? I have been Hokage for more than 40 years, young man. I will either step down of my own accord, or nature will force me into it. I see. Thank you. Hirofumi Kunio walked away without a vest, but with a massive smile on his face. Sarutobi would have given even money that the boy would come to the Leaf in a few years, after his clan received the daimyo's largesse. Naruto had a large, stupid smile on his face. As he bounced up and down, while waiting for the Hokage to shake his hand. I will call up Enma at our next meeting, young ninja, if you do not stop bouncing. This threat worked, but nothing could take the smile from his face. Keeping secrets, huh? No one else realized what your shield was, but I see the wrath of God in your future, boy. They were speaking in public, so the Hokage was circumspect with the boy. The whirlpool shield to fling away opponents. Or thrown weapons, Naruto added. That was also new. Naruto beamed and nodded. Excellent work, young shinobi. Excellent. As the Hokage moved on to speak with the other finalists, critiquing and praising in equal measure, Naruto began his self-satisfied bouncing again. The boy was a genius, but he had entirely too much energy. Hinata felt like her baby was soon to come into this world. And then they would take it. She had racked her mind trying to determine what to do. These were ninja, while she was from a ninja family, but hadn't been trained since she was 5, many years ago. She had been trying to work herself back into the form she remembered. Pulling up chakra to her fingers and attacking the points her father, his face still obscure in her memory, and mother showed her. 2 days later, when the guardians came to take her to a medical room, She gently tapped one guardian with a finger. When he started gagging, she tapped the other guardian on the spine at the top of his neck. One would die of a heart attack soon, and the other had a brain no longer able to communicate to her body. She stripped the shorter guardian and got into her clothing. Then her heart raged in her chest as she made her way to the door. A third guardian appeared, confused. Hinata's hand went to his chest, but she found herself bound in the man's powerful grasp. Her other hand reached over and tapped the man's forehead. He dropped to the ground. She left, 8 months pregnant, on a dark, moonless night. The only thing possibly worse would have been falling rain. She did not have food or water or a map. She had not been outside in 7 years. Her captors would not learn of her flight until a shift change happened in this facility. She would be out of their grasp by then. But the recorded images of what she had done, how she had killed, those would be added to the small archive of footage of how the nearly extinct Hyuga fought and killed. Kumo Ninja had been keeping this archive for 20 years now. Hinata, barely trained, her captors cursed her when they realized she was a genius. She had used old memories to do this, to kill 3 older, trained ninja. 3 light taps and they were dead. A mother had learned to do this for her unborn second child. She had power. Everyone had underestimated her, and now she was gone, likely dead. The Raikage, when told of this, did not fly into a rage. After all, his new nephew was a male of the Hyuga line but without any memories of the Hyuga massacre or any other Hyuga. In 10 or 12 years, when he became sexually mature, this boy would be able to father many more children than a single woman could. The boy would mate and mate and mate. The Raikage would train the boy to prize beautiful women, and to love the feeling of being on top of them. And the Hyuga would be reborn here, not like the tattered remnants still in Hidden Leaf. Powerful. Adding to the might of the Raikage, Uchiha Itachi made his way to Rice Country. The rumors had been right about this. Someone had definitely constructed underground bunkers here. Itachi decided to see what would happen if he damaged one. If he could get just a bit of information, then he would have his confirmation, and then he could plan for the future. He affixed explosive notes to the exposed entrance. Moments later he was well away when the explosion opened the secure entrance. Itachi had not interest in entering. He was waiting for someone, a security ninja, perhaps, to exit. He was not disappointed. A minute later, a coughing gray-haired young man wearing glasses exited through the gaping chasm that once was a staircase. Itachi gave the boy, or ninja, a chance to catch his bearings. Can you tell me if Orochimaru is around? Itachi asked. The gray-haired boy blinked behind his glasses. Is this a joke? No. Please tell me where I can find the snake Sanin. He's dead. The gray-haired ninja stalked forward. Itachi was prepared. I see. So, you served him. I was his best spy. Itachi sent a blast of black fire at the boy, which just nicked the ninja. His arm looked like seared beef, until it began to heal before Itachi's Sharingan eyes. A useful skill. Why? I no longer get the chance to kill Orochimaru, but I might as well kill his best spy. You have Sharingan eyes. I had not meant to use them. I guess my rage got the better of me. Prepare yourself. The slight, bespectacled ninja was better than he looked. He actually managed to graze Itachi with a chakra scalpel. Itachi decided to end this fight, in the most interesting way possible. Tsukuyomi. It took the silver-haired ninja a second to realize that he was in a different place. What? This, Kabuto, Itachi said, plucking the ninja's name from the ninja's own mind, is a world I control. I have been experimenting with this technique and have recently made a breakthrough. We will be viewing your past together, and subjecting you to the pain you caused other people. Let's begin. The mental Kabuto screamed as each one of his secrets, his spying, his training, his stealing of orphans, everything, was stripped from his mind and put in plain view. Kabuto felt the pain of being dissected with chakra scalpels while still alive, of horrific experiments being performed on him. He began to beg for death before the first hour was over. By the time 72 were complete, he had no active mind left. The portions keeping his body alive were mostly unaffected, but his memory, speech, and cognition centers were destroyed by the pain. Itachi re-emerged from Kabuto's mind a few moments after using the jutsu. He now knew exactly what he needed to do next. Orochimaru, after all, still had one living experiment who possessed Sharingan eyes. And several preserved sets of Sharingan eyes. All that needed to be dealt with, the entire legacy needed to be destroyed. Good job, Naruto. But I lost, again. My 7-foot-tall friend here, he is the last step before you begin to fight Enma. And the gulf between your skill and his has grown smaller in the last 2 months. I suspect you will be able to bring him to a draw in another 2 or 3 months. I know. Have your skills improved because of this sparring? Of course. I am getting much better. Exactly. So stop being so down in the dumps. Right, sensei. Thank you, honorable monkey, for the training. A pleasure, the tall, unnamed monkey said before he bowed to Sarutobi and then vanished. So, why doesn't he have a name? Naruto, he has a name, but because of his position as heir to the monkey throne, he may not share it with anyone who does not sign the contract. I know his name, as I do Enma's true name. Naruto seemed a bit mystified, but dropped it. He didn't yet realize the strange politics involved in working with a summoning partner. If Jiraiya decided to have him contract with the Toads, well, they were stranger than most. Now, I know that I told you I would be working on your fire techniques, something has come up. Are you bailing on me, sensei? No, not at all. It seems I must fill in more of your story, your personal story, and introduce you to your godfather. Really? Who is it? It's me, Jiraiya, the legendary ninja. Sarutobi bopped his old student on the head before he could make his young student an unruly delinquent. One of the Sannin. I know of you. You taught the fourth. Yes, that's right, brat. I taught your father. By the widening of the boy's eyes and the anger on Sarutobi's face, it became apparent Naruto did not know the details of his parentage yet. That could have been done more diplomatically, my idiot student. You were supposed to have told him. My father was the fourth. Why did no one tell me? Sarutobi shot a glare at Jiraiya before answering. It was my decision, Naruto. I wanted to give you as much information at a time as you could reasonably handle. That's why you found out about your tenant 3 years ago. And now about your famous father. I always wondered what happened, growing up. Now, I know. My mother. Minato's girlfriend, a lovely, saucy wench from Whirlpool. This time Naruto took Sarutobi's bow and bopped Jiraiya on the head. That's my mother. She's not a saucy wench, you pervert. This is important, Naruto, as I will do the formal unsealing of your father's last testament now that you have become a Chunin. I believe your hidden talents will keep you safe from most potential attacks. Hidden Stone still harbors hatred of this village because of your father's battle prowess. I know. I listened in history class. The friendly, hyperactive Naruto had presented himself again. Sarutobi expected another conversation on Naruto's displeasure of secrets being kept from him, but not for a few days or a week. Something like this would take Naruto some time to ponder. All right, brat, Jiraiya said. I will be your new teacher. You're dumping me? Naruto asked the Hokage. That's quite a step down, from a Hokage to a white-haired pervert. Hey, brat, I trained a Hokage, which is more than Sarutobi-sensei ever did. This was getting of control. Who knew Naruto could press all of Jiraiya's buttons like that? It was quite amusing, however. Excuse me, old student. I trained 3 people strong enough to be cages, but one was too evil, one too busy drowning her memories, and one too lazy, and distracted, to do the job. Naruto began to laugh now. It was contagious. Everyone was shouting. It was the best thing he'd seen in a long time. Who knew the Hokage could be so funny? Fine, fine. Naruto, let's get started. Have you ever accessed your tenant's chakra? No. No. Huh, well, we'll have to work on that. No, the Hokage said. No, Jiraiya, you will train him to be a ninja, not a Jinchuriki. What are you saying, you old fool? He's got this tremendous well of power. He'll be the most powerful ninja ever. Listen to me, my old student. Do you know what Naruto can do now? Well, no, I caught his matches at the Chunin exams, but that wouldn't have done a thing against Orochimaru. You don't understand. Naruto may or may not need the power of the Kyuubi in the future, but until he plateaus developing his standard ninja skills, I would not tempt fate. As of now, Naruto's secret has not widely spread. That story we put out all those years ago about the demon vessel dying is a result of the sealing. It worked. Demon Watchers have been waiting for the Kyuubi to reform, but no one knows how long that will take or where. The deception has worked. But if you begin having Naruto fling and flex Ukai around, that story will not hold. Jiraiya sighed. I get it. I see. HNN. He turned to the kid. So, what can a brat like you do that impresses Sarutobi-sensei so much? The Hokage laughed. You may show him, Naruto, but no permanent injuries. Got it. Hey, wait. What do you mean, no? The earth to all sides of Jiraiya exploded upward, and then covered the Sannin in tons of dirt and muck. He strengthened his body at the last second, otherwise he might have been crushed under that amount of weight. Holy toads on high. How did you do that? Naruto looked a bit smug now. Sarutobi had been working with him for a long time now. He wasn't just sleeping his way through lessons. You did something to create a deep trench around me. That's pretty good for slowing down an enemy. Not bad. Not bad at all. So what kind of earth-style technique is that? Naruto smiled even wider. It isn't, Jiraiya. It was Naruto's direct manipulation of elemental air, directed down into the earth. The dirt had no place to go, but up, and onto you. You can't be serious. I didn't think such a thing was possible. Who's the bad teacher now, Jiraiya? You better apologize or I won't let you take Naruto out of the village to train. I apologize. Please. Please believe me. What do you say, Naruto? Do you wish to train with that old fool? Naruto looked between the two men. Sarutobi had an hour a week to spare. This Jiraiya might have more time to help Naruto with the delicate, intricate wind manipulations he was working on. If he trained, the fourth, well, that's good enough for me. For now. Fine. Yahoo! Silly Jiraiya. Then a small voice interrupted things. Hey, old man, who's making all this racket? The Hokage turned around and saw that his grandson was standing at the door from the main house to the training ground. The young boy should have been doing his ninja lessons at this time. Where's Ebisu? The former internal affairs head had taken to teaching and tutoring better than anyone, including himself, had foreseen. He liked being a special Junin. Oh, him. I tied him to a chair. It's my turn to try to defeat you, old man. Not this. Konohamaru had recently taken to challenging the Hokage to ridiculous duels. He had good, wily impulses, but his execution was always so botched. He could tie Ebisu to a chair, but he couldn't run downstairs without tripping. Things like that. But Naruto, of all people. His snickering turned to laughter, and that annoyed Konohamaru. The boy began to fixate on Naruto again. Konohamaru had tried to get Naruto to teach him to throw kunai or a half-dozen other things. Now his focus was back on Namikaze Naruto. Sarutobi wished his young student luck. Konohamaru was nothing if not persistent. Naruto would discover that for himself. The Junin and 3 Chunin patrolling the northern border came across a pale girl, nearly dead. She had a baby in her arms. Who was she? How had she been surviving? One of the Chunin checked on the baby, dead. Likely stillborn. But the girl, 11, 12 years old, she was barely alive. It took 3 days for her to recover enough for her to open her eyes. Hyuga eyes. That was enough to get her sent back to Konoha, post haste. They could figure out what had happened and who this girl was. Uzumaki Naruto wasn't a terribly prideful creature, but he was happy to walk around the village in his new Chunin vest. And there was the girl he was looking for. Hey Sakura, would you like to go on a date with me? Wah! Sakura turned around. Oh, it's Naruto. No, I was waiting for Momuru to come out of the grocery store. I was going to ask him for a date. Momuru. The Uchiha. He's been so grumpy he was forced out of the Chunin exam because of his wounds. Grumpy makes you happy. Sakura closed the distance between them and bonked Naruto on the head. He had the good sense to look pained, even if he had had an air pocket up there to absorb the blow. Even getting bonked on the head was good for chakra control. No, I will never go on a date with you. Alright, you don't have to be mean about it. If you'd rather date a sourpuss, that's your choice. He started walking and then saw a girl come out of the grocery store. Naruto waved at her. She took a second, and then recognized Naruto, the boy who won the tournament. Hi. Hey, you're 10-10, right? Yes. Would you like to go on a date with me? Before she could answer, Sakura was back in Naruto's face. You idiot. You can't ask me out then go and ask her. Why not? You said no and hit me. Tenten's got a mind of her own. It's just rude, Sakura shouted. No, rude as hitting someone on the head. Go back to trying to get Momuru to look at you. Then Naruto turned to look back at Tenten. So, what do you say? Well, she was kinda right. It's not so cool to ask out another girl next to the one who just turned you down. Naruto just smiled, and bounced on his toes. Not accepting Tenten's explanation. I just heard Sakura refuse. You might have wanted to wait a while and hoped I forgot. Naruto just smiled wider. Is that a no? Tenten looked so confused. No, I guess I will. But you're paying. I like fish. What do you like? Anything. In large portions. A woman after my own heart. Thus, Naruto got his first date. And the Sandaime Hokage, who'd been spying from his office, burst out laughing. The Hokage should have been tense, or angry, or pensive given the meeting that was about to happen. Instead he felt like giggling. He just couldn't get the previous morning out of his head. What had happened when Uzumaki Naruto became Namikaze Naruto? At least the boy had his first date before all this fame business was thrown at him. Sarutobi had expected quite a reaction to the news of a surviving Namikaze, but this was extreme. Naruto was already begging to take out-of-town missions with Team Yamanaka, or to leave on a training mission with Jiraiya. The girls, who knew the girls could become rabid over such a sliver of news. One pink-haired girl, a Haruno, had begun screaming, Naruto, I'll go on a date with you. Someone else threw panties at the young blonde ninja. Naruto had the dignity to blush, and the good sense not to pick them up. Naruto had holed up in his apartment after that, and refused to answer the door. Sarutobi giggled just a bit, and imagined that Jiraiya would have a body parody of the whole thing in his next book. The Toad Sanin had been scribbling notes, like a madman, after all. When the door opened and the second person walked into this conference room, Sarutobi returned to his rather sour, dour standard look for diplomatic gatherings. He didn't know the man who walked into the room, nor did he recognize the man's guards who took up position outside the open door. But Sarutobi had seen those robes on other people in his rather long lifetime. They were the Lightning Daimyo's most formal ceremonial robes. apparently begging for mercy at a peace conference merited his most awe-inspiring robes. The man was wearing cloth and jewels that were equal in value to a year's earnings for an entire civilian village. Sarutobi hated the gesture. He had been prepared to offer a sliver of mercy to this daimyo if he was at all convincing in shifting the blame for Kumo's actions entirely onto the raikage. But now, this flaunting of wealth. It just irritated the Sandaime Hokage. The smug bastard had enough pearls embroidered to his arms to have kept divers busy for 20 years. Sarutobi vowed to humble this man. Turning over that robe would be just one of the requirements for a formal peace. Sarutobi would make a public display of having craftsmen tear it apart to recover the gold threads, the inevitable chunks of chakra-absorbing metals sewn into special pockets as a weak kind of anti-ninja armor, and the gems and stones making the thing look more like a chandelier than a piece of clothing. Good day to you, Hokage. Welcome, daimyo. I hear whispers of some unusual happenings in your village. A lost lamb has reclaimed his patrimony. My word, the spies are getting better, and faster. I hadn't thought it wise to tip your hand in such a way. The daimyo tried to shrug, but the added bulk of his padded robes made it hard to tell. You know I have spies. Why shouldn't I admit such a thing? This man was an idiot, Sarutobi realized. Such an admission, tantamount to saying, I now have something you treasure, and I can hurt it if I wish, ensured that Sarutobi would absolutely destroy Lightning and Hidden Cloud's abilities to dabble in foreign intrigues for a long time to come. The Hokage was relieved of the necessity of responding when the conference room door opened again. The Wind Daimyo entered. He looked abject and angry at the same time. Hokage. Daimyo. The tall, thin, heavily tanned man wore a simple robe. He sat down in his chair and said nothing. His mind was obviously elsewhere. Sarutobi hated to do it, but wind would have to be broken. This man was wise enough that he probably knew it, too. While he likely had no foreknowledge of what Hidden Sand was going to do, his little budgetary games with his ninja force had brought this to pass. Hidden Sand would pay, and the Wind Lord would pay, too. Within the next few minutes, the room filled. The youngest person in the room was a terrified-looking teenager, the Rice Daimyo. He was the fourth person to hold the position in the last 7 years. Orochimaru had promised to bring wealth and prominence to Rice country, and he had, for a time. But he had also handled his disagreements with various Rice daimyos by killing them. The young man was probably safer sitting in this room than even having a friendly meal with the former head of Hidden Sound. The oldest person here was an acting Cage. He was one of the few Hidden Sand Council members who hadn't been sent on the invasion, since he was far too old to be an active ninja. The Raikage, a man who was about the age Minato would have been if not for the Kyuubi, just sat and smiled an odd little smile, like he had a secret. This man's behavior wasn't proof by any means, but it led Sarutobi to believe he had something to do with the young Hyuga girl who had recently been brought back to the Hidden Leaf village. The Fire Lord had wanted to attend, but Sarutobi asked him not to bother. He had a plan in mind for handling all this, and a civilian in the room might make it a challenge. All of this was carefully scripted. The meeting's location was scrupulously neutral, a resort community in grass country. The rules were simple. Each figure could bring 5 bodyguards, only one of whom could sit outside the meeting room. The only people allowed inside this room were cages and daimyos. The room fell into silence. As the victor in the recent attempted invasion, Sarutobi began the meeting. Thank you for coming. I hope we will all be able to come to an agreement this day. Many things have led to this situation, so I realize it won't be easy to deal with so many issues. There is only issue, the Raikage interrupted. What will it cost me for the return of my ninja, assuming they are still alive? Of the captured ninja, only the Hidden Leaf missing ninja Orochimaru has been executed. All the ninja who belong to foreign forces have been healed up and well treated. And even permitted to participate in the Chunin exams. I understand, the acting Kage said. Very crafty of you, keeping all of this confined to rumor and hearsay. It gives you a lot of leverage in this, you crafty old monkey. The Hokage smiled. You have no idea how much leverage I actually have in this. No idea at all, but like I said, there are many issues to deal with. Why don't we go around the room and see where we are on terms? As the Rakage suggests, why don't we begin with the price to be paid for the safe return of hostages? The brusque hidden cloud ninja pursed his lips. I will offer 20,000 ryo for each hostage, provided they are still in fighting condition. Sarutobi said nothing. The lightning daimyo, he of the bejeweled robe, did not contradict his counterpart. The acting Kage was next. My situation is more complicated. I would actually prefer not to have one of the hostages returned. Gaara, Sarutobi asked. The old Suna ninja nodded, a bit hesitant. Fine. What is your offer? With our impoverished state, we can afford 8,000 ryo per ninja. Sarutobi's eyes turned to the rice daimyo. Both he and the young man knew why there was no acting leader of hidden sound. My country has been devastated by a man who promised to make us wealthy and powerful. My predecessors drained our treasuries at his demand. To be honest, I would prefer for the hidden sound to have never existed, and I will pay Hidden Leaf 200,000 ryo to handle the ninja from sound they captured. I do not want them. That surprised everyone in the room save for Sarutobi. A daimyo giving up on military power. It was unprecedented. This person was the youngest in the room, but he had the best sense of reality of anyone here. He realized and admitted that his country was going to be vastly changed as a result of this. Other comments. What will you accept, old monkey? That was the acting Kage. I remind you to observe the formalities, acting Kage. I will accept none of these proposals as presented. But it is interesting to hear what. No. Enough. I am here because my daimyo forced me, the Rakage said. I only care to get my ninja back. 20,000 ryo per person is more than double what Hidden Sand is offering. You just can't squeeze blood from a rock. Hidden Leaf is the wealthy village, not us. Sarutobi just nodded. Oh, I think the monetary portion of your offer is not far off the mark, once we factor in the contribution that will be required from your daimyo. What? The gaudy man said. For not supervising his military force more carefully. But none of you has touched on the key issue. You offer ryo, which is a start, but you offer no promises of security to me or the Fire Country. I cannot just return your ninja and leave you in a position to do this again in a few years. No. What do you mean by security, Hokage? The Wind Daimyo inquired. Obviously I will require that the total compensation from all three forces fully repay the cost of our precautions, and I will require more than just a piece of paper saying you won't do this again. For example, I will require hostages of appropriate rank. No one has said anything about hostages, the Lightning Daimyo said, suddenly a bit nervous. He had thought confidence would protect him from paying any price. Fool. Sarutobi leaned forward. I said, hostages. I plan to say, technique libraries. I will say, summoning contracts. I have a lot to say. This is outrageous. The Rakage bellowed, standing up. He was at the door before anyone could blink. But he could not open it. What sort of trick is this? Insurance, Sarutobi said. No one will leave this room until I permit it. How? The Rice Daimyo asked. I had 30 minutes here by myself. I am not a sealing master by any means, but I know more than anyone in this room. No one will leave without my consent. That just served as a dare to prove Sarutobi wrong. It took 20 minutes, and more than a few threats directed at the Hokage, before people accepted the truth of what he'd said. Shall we resume? The Rakage sat like a petulant child. Keep them, then. I can rebuild my ninja forces. If your cost will destroy the uniqueness of my hidden village, I will let them rot in your jails and force you the expense of keeping them. I see. And you, acting cage. I must have at least the members of our most prominent clans ransomed. Perhaps we can negotiate. Sarutobi wondered how deluded these people really were. Only the rice daimyo still seemed to understand that his independent status as a ruler was over. Let me explain one detail that you seem to have overlooked. I have had your Junin, your black ops specialists, the best of your villages in my custody for 2 months now. I said they were all in good health, but that does not mean they haven't been interrogated. I have your most recent secrets in my possession as we speak. Do I need to spread a few dirty items around to prove this claim? No one looked at all interested in having this happen. Now, let's be serious. I am not signing any treaty, or unlocking this room, until you are all unable, legally and otherwise, to make war on my hidden village. Some of you were duped by Orochimaru, but that does not leave you blameless. Some of you were squeezed by unfortunate politics with your daimyo, and that does not excuse you. Some of you just love to make war, and that makes me even less forgiving, even if your people just set a blockade to support the invasion. That set things off again. Sarutobi held more cards than he'd revealed so far. He had 5 opponents in front of him. One was ready to sign almost anything Sarutobi presented to him, but the other 4 needed to be humbled. Eventually the Wind Daimyo silenced the others. You have some strong opinions. What will it take? What do you want? As price for returning the ninja who I should rightfully try and execute. As payment for an attempt at slaughtering my people. I demand that each of your richest ninja clans pay 80% of their wealth, plus a hostage. I demand that each noble family or member of the daimyo's court pay 50% of their wealth, plus 2 hostages. I demand an additional payment of 20,000 ryo per ninja from the hidden village each of my prisoners works for. I demand that Rice Country sign an annexation, and that Fire Country have the right of vetoing any Raikage or Kazekage or daimyo candidate for the next 50 years. I demand all the summoning contracts held by your ninja clans, all the techniques that are not in common circulation. I intend to ruin your ability to make war against us, but to leave you all able to continue to take missions for clients. If I wanted to destroy you utterly, I could. The Raikage, calmer now than he had been for quite some time, said, I have heard enough. I will do nothing of what you demand. Indeed, I shall lower my bid to 2,000 ryo per prisoner. I think you overplay your hand, elderly ninja, and I will not weaken my village for a fool like you. The acting Kazekage bit his lips, then began to talk. I must concur. You are too kind-hearted to follow through on these threats. To demand such things from us, you must be prepared to destroy our villages in retribution. The leaf is powerful in body, but weak in mind. The Rice Daimyo, speaking for Hidden Sound, said, I will agree to the annexation. As weak as we are at this time, I expect an invasion within the year from any one of our neighbors. The monetary conditions are severe as our treasuries are almost non-existent. Might we enter into negotiations on that point? Sarutobi nodded. Everyone else in the room looked murderous. They were jockeying for position, trying to bargain down the Hokage, and this teenager had just destroyed the illusion of false strength they were trying to create. You are wise, Daimyo. As you have seen with your own eyes, my ninja have occupied the former bases of the Hidden Sound. After those facilities are emptied and destroyed, we will use our ninja to protect your nation until the annexation is complete. I think we can come to terms, but, the rest of you, my terms will grow harsher. As Cloud and Sand reduce their bids, I increase my demands. The Lightning Daimyo will not walk out of this room with that robe on. It is garish and foolish to bring such a thing to a meeting of supplication. That useless wealth will be broken down and put to use. I've never, the fat man said. The Raikage looked at the Hokage with questioning eyes. He didn't know what the old ninja was up to, but he didn't care for it. Shut up, Karuto, the Raikage said to his daimyo. You were stupid about that ceremonial robe. We were here to beg and prove our poverty, but you had to dress up. You have so little sense, someone must remind you not to drown when you bathe. But I wonder what the Hokage has yet to tell us. He has our ninja prisoners, he has some of our secrets, what else do you have? What makes you so confident this day? The Hokage nodded a few times. Very perceptive, Rakage. Very good. You seem to finally be paying attention. Well, the main point is that 6 hours ago Hidden Cloud and Hidden Sand were infiltrated by special teams. As we speak, your summoning contracts, your hidden stashes of cash, your armories, and your reserved technique libraries, they belong to the Leaf. Within 2 hours, your banks will be stormed and robbed by other teams. All of your wealth will flow away. In the capital cities of these 3 countries, my teams have done at least that much. You will sign the treaties if you wish to see even a sliver of this wealth return. If I do not walk out of this room with signed treaties by 8 o'clock this evening, my armies will invade all 3 countries. If I am still here by 8 tomorrow morning, then we execute all the prisoners we have. And beyond that, there is one final provision. I do not think any of you care for a full-time military occupation, as that will lead to a destruction of all that you hold dear. The room went up in shock and screaming for quite a long time. This conference was a trick. You lured us here to lull us into calm. You have betrayed us. These were the kind of negotiations that Sarutobi liked. Yes, Sarutobi had the upper hand because he had betrayed these men. He had attacked them when their strongest ninja were away, just as they had proposed to do to his village while it was in the middle of hosting an important international event. Did they think Sarutobi a fool? Did they think him old and doddering? They should realize soon that they were wrong. Even if one of the 2 other ninja managed to kill him, then their countries, their soldiers, and everything they valued would fall before any of these people could manage to break down the ceiling arrays inside this room. And if Sarutobi did not emerge with them by a set time, then his ninja had orders to kill everyone here. He had left it to the rather odd Junin named Maida to do this. The man was to rig up a few hundred exploding notes in the rooms bordering on this one, to cover the 4 walls, ceiling, and floor. The ninja was a bit strange in the head, but he had never failed to execute an order. It was a doomsday type scenario, but Sarutobi was done playing games. He played to win. These people would capitulate or their countries and villages would fall, and Sarutobi wouldn't have to worry about picking another successor. The small, desolate girl looked up when someone came into her hospital room. She'd had a lot of people come to speak with her. The eyes. This person was like her. Hyuga. The young woman looked at Hinata for a few moments before smiling. I am called Miki. Hinata. I knew your father and your mother. Hinata just nodded. How are you alive? The bad people told me I was the last one alive. A shake of the head answered the question. I was one of 11 Hyuga who remained in this village, the Hidden Leaf, when everyone else left. My father, he never said anything. He did not wish for us to remain, and tried to convince us to leave. He likely considered it yet another failure for the clan. Few people willingly own up to their failings. The room fell silent. I would like for you to come and stay with me and my husband, after you're healed. Why? Because you should stay with family. The impassive Hinata became even colder. I killed 3 people. Did they tell you that? I have had 2 babies, one is dead and I don't know where the other one is. I haven't talked to anyone but a captor in 7 years. Do you really want me to stay? The girl was certainly blunt. Mickey's surprised look said. Yes. Can I meet your husband? Before I decide. Of course. He'll be back from our store after 6. Store. Grocery store. Vegetables, rice, meat, and the like. You and he aren't ninja, then? No. That was the only reason your father didn't force me and the others to leave with them. Civilians through and through. But the children who stayed behind, all 3 of them, have become ninja. I want to be a ninja, Hinata said. That surprised Mickey. Why? I will never be weak again. Never. By the shock on Mickey's face, this was the first bit of information that had her rethinking her offer to Hinata. But, her face eased. Well, I will help you as much as I can, even if it's just making sure you get plenty to eat. Thank you, Hinata said. The room fell back into silence. Mickey left, after waving, left without saying another word. Hinata responded, after the door closed, by smiling. Hoshigaki Kisame and Toby stood in the forest outside the hidden leaf. Toby thinks the wall is very tall. Why did leader make me bring you along? Toby is strongest ninja in Akatsuki. Not getting hit by Samahata isn't the same thing as strength. Dodging is just one skill, you damned muppet. Toby thinks that Kisame is not a happy ninja. Toby thinks that Kisame needs to eat some seaweed. Kisame went to punch the idiot, but his fist went right through Toby. Figures. I am going to kill you. Just as soon as we deal with the intelligence. A too powerful genin in the last place the Kyuubi was known to be, the missing child of the man who sealed away the Kyuubi. The stars have lined up. Toby likes stars. Toby counts them at night, but always stops at 10. Toby wished he had more fingers. Kisame said nothing. He just watched and waited. Eventually he got a clue as to the location of their target. Female voices carried on the wind told him what he needed to go. It's true, he was at training ground 21. My sister just ran back and told me. Oh, I want to see the last Namikaze. Kisame looked down the orange-masked Muppet. Toby knows. Toby has been inside every hidden village. Let's go. Toby began to skip. Kisame had to make an effort not to kill his partner. By the time they penetrated the village and found the correct training ground, Kisame had imagined, and discarded, 19 different ways to kill Toby. None of the methods were harsh or painful enough. All those thoughts disappeared when he set eyes on a shock of blonde hair attached to a fairly small young man. Said young man was practicing taijutsu against a training log. But each time he struck the log, a gouge appeared. On one strike, a deep slice penetrated the log and a small portion fell off. The ninja wasn't fast enough to keep up with either Toby, who, despite being an idiot, did seem to have some skill, or Kisame. But, a young ninja able to channel chakra like that while in a hand-to-hand mode. Someone had given this kid some kind of training. These attacks would fail against Samahata, of course. But it was exciting. The Gaki might actually have some merit. Toby thinks the boy knows we're here. Toby tried to whisper, but the words came out rather loud. The young blonde ninja hadn't turned around, but his hands seemed to be moving in some type of ninjutsu. Kisame only had a moment to detect something, chakra flaring up near him. Move, he hissed to Toby. Kisame dove. Toby hopped up and down a bit, and then a deep crater formed where Kisame had stood, and Toby seemed to be almost floating over the gaping hole. Toby likes that. Toby thinks explosions are the best. Master Kisame must find out how the boy makes his explosions. They feel different from what Master Deidara does. The little Muppet kept babbling happily, but Kisame had to agree about how different that explosion was. Yes. Yes. Toby must know. I won't be telling you anything, the blonde ninja said. He was closer than Kisame would have liked. Fine by me, Kisame said. You just need to come with us. If you're who we think you are, we definitely have a use for you. You expect me to politely walk away with Nukenin, one of whom looks like a jumping diseased grapefruit on tiny legs and the other looks like he sat in a freezer overnight sharpening his teeth. Oh, Toby thinks he's funny. Funny, funny. Does he always shout that much? The blonde-haired ninja said. Unfortunately, Kisame admitted. So, it seems I need to get rough with you. Please meet Samahata, my most very special sword. I know that name. Ah, one of the swords used by the 7 swordsmen in Mist, before it was disbanded. Very good. Kisame swung and saw the boy get into taijutsu form, without even a kunai in his hand. It looked like he was going to use the chakra enhancement he'd been practicing earlier on that mangled training log. The boy's fist shot out for a punch, but it wavered when it got close to Samaheda. A moment later, the boy disappeared into smoke. Wah! Toby really likes this boy now. Makes explosions and dissolves into smoke. How can Toby be as cool as him? Kisame was on his guard. Was it an odd type of kawarimi? No, it couldn't be, but it was proof of a corporeal clone, like a shadow clone. Well, that's another piece of evidence. The boy is a chakra monster. There's no way a new Chunin should be able to perform that jutsu, let alone have it performing jutsu like whatever that explosion was. We need to leave now, the memories of what happened here have already been sent. Toba's sad. Kisame promised a great fight. Toby wants to see it. If you don't start moving, I'll figure out just how to make Samahada eat your chakra. Toba's going. Don't hurt Toby. Well, the taller guy, he was blue. Carried a big sword. The real Naruto had been in his weekly lesson with Sarutobi when his eyes went wide, which caused his first spar against Enma to end badly for him. Blue. And the shorter guy wore an orange, swirling mask. The Hokage seemed to wilt a bit. Inside our walls, and no one detected it until they found you. Do you always send decoys out now? Before I have to leave my apartment? You better believe it. I send out a shadow clone to train or buy food or something. Then I leave, under henge. It's kinda funny when I get the shadow clone's memories, especially if it was dispelled accidentally by an aggressive fangirl, but if I had to deal with it, I think the finger of God would get a workout. Sarutobi was glad that his student, and Jiraiya's student, now, as well, was as paranoid as he was. It had just saved the boy from what could have been a horrible confrontation. The blue man sounds like a ninja called Hoshigaki Kisame. He's a swordsman of some renown, but his special talents lay in water-style attacks. He is known for having inexplicably large chakra reserves. The orange mask, it brings no one to mind. You say he survived a direct strike from the fist of God. He was just floating there and started shouting about how much he loved explosions. The Hokage made up his mind then. I will not risk Anbu on this. Kisame once killed a daimyo and all his seasoned bodyguards. The man is very strong, although I do not know why his skin is blue like that. All of a sudden, Jiraiya, who was supposedly out of the village, popped in through a window. What the hell did you do to the Raikage, sensei? The rumors I heard. After he was in and speaking, he noticed his newest student nursing a large bruise on his forehead. And what's up with the Gaki? You abusing the Chunin now? Batting them around with your bow work? Shut it, Naruto said. The Akatsuki were just here and tried to kidnap my shadow clone. Damn. Sarutobi let the room get quiet before he turned to look at his white-haired former student. The treaty talks went well, for the hidden leaf. As for the Raikage, if he could have killed me that day, he would have. Let's just say that their attempted stunt cost all of them, even the innocent lords who knew nothing of what their military counterparts were doing, a lot more than they expected, and far more than they could afford. We'll begin returning Sand and Cloud Ninja in a week, just as soon as the names of all the permanent hostages are worked out, and begin the trials for the Sound Ninja the week after that. Why not just kill them? Jiraiya asked. Political cover. Each one will face a tribunal. A ninja, a civilian judge from the daimyo's court, and a monk from one of the temples. Jiraiya nodded. Politics usually bored him, so the Hokage wasn't surprised. So, the Akatsuki, Jiraiya said. They've finally sniffed out Naruto. I told you this. Revealing the last Namikaze business would have consequences. I didn't realize they'd be this bad, the Hokage said. I don't know which is worse, the shark-looking guy or the damned girls squealing whenever they see my clone in the street. I can see why Momuru was such a stuck-up bastard, the frequencies their voices hit, it's like someone stabbing me with Senbon. Jiraiya rolled his eyes. Enough, Naruto. The question is, how do we handle this? I can't go and take back the announcement, the Hokage said. I'm not blaming you, Sensei, Naruto said. I agreed when you asked me if you should make my status public. I guess I'll get to test my skills a lot earlier than I had expected. But I also need to get stronger. I have no good way of dealing with a swordsman, and that particular sword did something to disrupt the shadow clone before it even struck. Fine. It's time for Naruto to go on a training trip. Absolutely not, Jiraiya, the Hokage said. Like I took Minato on about a year after he made Chunin. It's where he made his greatest strides as a ninja. He was so intrigued with the summoning technique that he began research that led to his most famous technique. He already played around with seals. He spent 3 years, off and on, playing with chakra extrusion, which culminated in the development of the Rasengan. Then he began to delve into sealing at a high level, for which I still somewhat blame myself, as it permitted him to create a powerful demon sealing ritual when the time came. And let's not forget that he badmouthed my earliest raunchy novel so much that I wrote a serious piece of fiction, the protagonist of which eventually lent our Naruto here his name. That sounds awesome, Naruto shouted. The Hokage shot withering looks at both of his students. I forbid it. Well, Jiraiya continued on, not minding his sensei. I think Naruto's further along developing his style, but he has a long ways to go. Wind techniques, if developed correctly, could make him the equal of any Kage, but I think we haven't thought about this enough. There's more to dig in and discover. You have a few original power techniques. How about using wind for subtlety or evasion, or to move very quickly, or, I guess the possibilities are endless. If you know what you're doing, and that wrath shield thingy sounds like you do, then wind trumps everything else. Fire can't overwhelm your wind, if it can't touch you to hurt you. Jiraiya, listen to me. Naruto is a powerful young ninja, but he is not strong enough in this dangerous time to go traipsing about the world while you go and visit every brothel you stumble across. I don't have to pay, old man. I'm the legendary Jiraiya. Sarutobi's face tightened into a scowl. I will revoke the apprenticeship, Toad Sanin. I will continue to instruct Naruto myself. Why? Naruto asked. Wouldn't I be safer where no one expects me to be? Sarutobi frowned. It was a good question, but Sarutobi's knee-jerk response was to shout, no, again. Why was he resisting this so much? He asks a fair question. What has you so agitated about this? I have calmed down a bit. I was just trying to figure that out myself. I am not, normally, quite so irrational. You sound like a parent breaking down when he has to send his first child to the academy. Naruto said. The Hokage had no reaction at that point. But his mind began to spin. Was it so simple? Just a knee-jerk reaction to permitting Naruto to leave, to exit the village walls for an indeterminate amount of time. It is possible, Naruto. But I can't help but feel that sending you out of the village is a mistake. I would propose an alternative. I will step down as Hokage. Oh no, not this again, Jiraiya said. Stop looking at me to step behind that desk. And I will become your full-time instructor, Naruto. I have trained 3 powerful ninja already, with you as the 4th. You already outstrip me as a wind practitioner, but I am a master of technique envisioning and creation. I can continue to help you grow and to become well-rounded. Naruto nodded and scrunched up his face, trying to think this through. I think this is a mistake, Sensei, Jiraiya said. Well-rounded is all well and fine, but the strongest ninja, leaving you and Orochimaru aside, as both of you believed in different versions of well-roundedness, are always lopsided. Naruto has to get massively powerful as quickly as possible. I have suggested, and realize why it was vetoed, training him in the Kyuubi chakra. Keeping him a secret still holds, even if Akatsuki has guessed at the secret. We don't want Naruto targeted by even more foes than just those bastards. But, that means he'll need to be an S-rank ninja very shortly. To be fair, Jiraiya added, you are a better teacher than I am, as you love it more. But I have the time and wanderlust to help the kid. You won't be able to untangle yourself from the Hokage position quickly even once you land on a successor. Minato relied on you as his senior counselor up until his untimely death. However, Naruto and I could leave today, if you permitted it. I would like to do this, sensei, Naruto added, calmer now too. Tell me your reasons, Naruto. Sarutobi hated the idea for unknown, gut instinct, reasons. He needed someone to push him off his, no. He was willing to be drug into a different camp, but he needed a powerful reason. I would like to escape this blasted fame for a while. That's not a good reason, the Hokage began to say. Which is the first reason I started joking that Jiraiya should take me away to train. I knew he'd done it before, you see. But, in the last few days, I've come to realize that I need to leave in order to train. I can't practice the wind manipulations of theorized, not without causing massive damage to a training ground or a section of the forest outside the walls. I also need to see the world, I think. I need to know what's possible. You and I stumbled onto my very strong wind affinity, and you helped me to hone it. But now I need more ideas. Something Jiraiya just said made me think. How would I turn this wind affinity into more than a massive exploding note? Could I use it for spying, or thieving documents, or kidnapping targets? Could I get that kind of control over it? Or could I use it, the way my father did with seals and reverse summoning, to make me faster than any ninja before? Or, I don't know what else is possible. You've both seen the world, sometimes through war, sometimes for missions, sometimes for pleasure. I'd like that chance, too. Sarutobi sighed. The boy was being reasonable. And he did have some fair to middling reasons, better than Jiraiya's at any rate. I do not like this idea. I know both of you do, but something about this strikes fear into my heart. But, I will compromise. Thank you, sensei, Naruto said. Don't thank me yet. Here is the proposal. Jiraiya will take you on a mission I will assign him. It will be to a foreign nation and will last less than a month. At the time of your return, you will show me a technique of Jiraiya's that he has taught you, and an original technique of your own design. If you do this, along with completing the mission satisfactorily, then I will permit you both to leave on a training trip for, say, 1 year. If you fail, and I decide not to kill my white-haired student for being a moron, then Jiraiya will accept appointment to be Godime Hokage, and I will take over as your full-time sensei, Naruto. What? Jiraiya gasped. Okay. Naruto said. At this, Sarutobi began to laugh. This trip was going to make Jiraiya so miserable, and so fearful, that he wouldn't enjoy himself at all. He had to actually teach. Minato had actually grown tremendously on his training trip, but it was almost all self-discovered. Minato had admitted to Sarutobi one night over drinks in his new office, and Sarutobi's old office, in the Hokage Tower, that the only things Jiraiya taught him on that trip were to how cure venereal diseases and how to summon toads. He further admitted, once he was drunk enough, that he listened to and tried Jiraiya's methods of seducing women, and got a broken arm for his trouble the first time he tried Jiraiya's teaching. He owned up to developing his own techniques that worked much better for him, even on someone as fiercely independent as Uzumaki Kushina. Naruto, like his self-motivated father, was capable of performing beautifully, of dragging himself into greatness, as Sarutobi knew from first-hand experience. It would be easier, and faster, with a motivated, dedicated teacher, however. This trip would force Jiraiya to actually do something rather than sniff around the local young women and get drunk until all hours of the night. Do you accept, my aged student? Jiraiya's face was a mass of wrinkles and frowns. Yes. I will expect a weekly report delivered by Toad Messenger. That should help to remind you of your obligations. As Jiraiya leapt out of the room before he could get any more conditions attached to this farce, Sarutobi smiled at Naruto. Come to the tower tomorrow. I will select an appropriate C or B ranked mission. Yes, Sensei. Thank you. Prove yourself, Naruto. Make me proud. Naruto smiled and nodded. I know you don't want me to go, but my gut tells me I need to do this. Mine say the exact opposite. May the better intestines win. Naruto yawned. It sucked being stuck in a hotel while the pervy sage was out, scouting out new operatives. They were a day from Fire Country's capital, and to meeting the diplomat they were supposed to escort to Wave Country. When Sensei had explained all the details of this trial training mission, it seemed like it would be interesting. Like a secret mission with a smart guy who would just ooze knowledge. But, no, it was pretty much like Sensei had said. Jiraiya was off. Naruto was alone, stranded in a town he'd never visited before. He spent a bit of time on the road experimenting with a few wind techniques, but it had been 2 days since they'd left, and Jiraiya hadn't taught him anything yet. Maybe Naruto would just have to fail to learn a new technique, just to spite the white-haired bastard, force him to settle down in the hidden village and wear that ugly hat. A knock on the door pulled Naruto from his anger. He spiked a bit of air chakra. A gust of air outside the door brushed up against whatever was out there. 2 people, neither with the massive hair Jiraiya had. Naruto didn't have a sense of who they were, but he had one bad guess. Naruto created a cage bunshin and went out the window. He walked right up to the top of the roof. It'd be easier to escape jumping from rooftop to rooftop. Hopefully his shadow clone would give him time to escape. Goddammit, Toby. The voice. The blue-skinned ninja. Shit. How did you know he'd go out the window? Naruto's head whipped around. There, in the shadows. Yes, it was that guy with the sword. His shadow clone trick hadn't worked, somehow they'd expected it. He jumped off the roof to escape. Toby thinks blonde ninja is very crafty. Blondie did just what Toby would have done, run. Naruto jumped from roof to roof. He didn't have any time for mocking comments. The blue one was way above his level, and he had no idea at all what the orange-masked one could do. When he jumped from another roof, he realized his pursuers were right behind him. He tried a bit of an experiment. He threw his arms slightly behind him and poured wind chakra through the tenketsu in his hands. Instead of falling and landing on the next building, the added jet of power pushed Naruto over 3 buildings. The only problem with this, of necessity, experiment was that he hadn't landed on top of the building, but rather had clung to the wall about halfway up it. Naruto ran up the building and then tried the whole thing again. The second blast pushed him further. He looked like he was going to make it all the way across the wide river that bisected the town. Close. He landed on the water and his feet clung to it while he tried to think. Where the hell was Jiraiya? How was Naruto supposed to find the worthless old bastard in a village of 20,000? Jiraiya bragged they had over 50 bars and clubs here. The old man could be in any of them, or none of them. Naruto roused from his thinking when he felt the water behind him begin to roil. Something very like a shark seemed to be forming close to him. Naruto leapt onto the bank. All this wind chakra had bought Naruto only a few seconds. He ran. Without a thought. He was not prepared for this, not at all. But, if it was his time, he would not be captured. He would kill himself to deny his enemy what it desired. They seemed to know about and desire the Kyuubi. They couldn't have it. He'd protect the hidden leaf even if it took his death to do so. These people did not know what they were messing with when they came after Namikaze Naruto. The chase became more like a herding. Anytime Naruto got too close to the river, to vanish back into the larger half of the town, sharks appeared. The orange-masked ninja somehow got ahead of Naruto at one point and forced him down a particular road. He decided on a plan. He realized they were hurting him. He couldn't exactly stop that, if he were but a single ninja. But, if he precisely created a massive quantity of shadow clones, and made sure they had truly equal chakra, then Naruto might be able to escape in the chaos. Mass shadow clone technique. Suddenly the little alley was filled with 1,000 blonde-haired ninja. The ninjas began climbing every wall possible to get out of the alley. They began dispersing almost as soon as they were created. God damn it. How come we never knew he could do this? Toby thinks it's pretty. So many ninja to dance for Toby. Shut it. Keep wounding them until we can find the real one. In the confusion, they did not notice one of the blonde ninjas dropping down into the storm sewer system. While he did not like the smells down there at all, he liked the idea of dying even less. Naruto finally heard Jiraiya arrive and take to battling the Akatsuki. He evidently drove them off, because he was soon calling out, "Yaki!" over and over again. After 10 minutes of listening to it, and deciding neither the blue-skinned nor the orange-masked ninja would debase themselves that way, Naruto crawled to the surface. "Here, worthless teacher. Naruto, are you okay?" The blonde ninja held up his hand and said, "Stop right there. Summon a toad or somehow prove that you're Jiraiya." That confused the toad Sannin for a moment, then he smiled. He performed the summoning and a small toad appeared and asked for some candy. Jiraiya threw him some and dismissed him. "What took you so long?" "Well, I was busy." It even seemed to sound lame to Jiraiya's pink-tinged ears. "The first clue I had was when I felt enough chakra sent up to make a couple hundred shadow clones. 1,000 or thereabouts. 300 got killed before those two were forced to stop hunting them." Jiraiya nodded once, as if that were that. "Right. You're safe. Let's get our stuff from the hotel, and get on the road." Naruto was getting angrier the longer his bastard teacher spoke. He hadn't apologized. He was late. Naruto might like the guy, and might have had high or unrealistically high expectations for the man who'd taught his father, but Naruto couldn't trust him. He couldn't depend upon him. Not one word to Sensei about this. You do that for me, and I'll teach you my swamp of the underworld technique. If I told Sensei, he'd kill you. He was against this from the beginning. And now, I have to think he was right. Jiraiya's face fell. So, stop trying to bribe me. I'll give the old man a full, unvarnished report. And if you don't teach me something, Sarutobi will either kill you or make you Hokage. I'm not sure which is worse. Jiraiya said under his breath. Naruto didn't say another word until they arrived the daimyo's court. Even then he was barely civil. "I see, young Namikaze, that is a very interesting tale. The Fire Lord's ambassador was a kiss. And he loved to talk, wouldn't shut up. Indeed, the only way to have him stop talking was to tell a story. So long as someone was talking, he was happy. As soon as he realized he was being escorted by a Sannin and the son of a Hokage, he couldn't have become friendlier and more amenable. Still, for Naruto's tastes, talking to the civilian kiss was better than talking with Jiraiya. They were 1 week into their trip, and it felt like Naruto had been gone for a month already. He hadn't realized he could hold a grudge, but it seemed he could. He had evidently established certain expectations regarding teachers, and Jiraiya had broken them all. The Hokage was always on time, always had 1 or 2 things he would instruct Naruto to work on, would trust his student to practice on his own time. That's what Naruto thought teaching was. It was only pure luck that Naruto was still alive right now. Jiraiya hadn't said word 1 about training yet, either. He slowed his breathing and calmed himself. He was a professional on a mission. Bullshit could wait until the client was safe. Naruto's eyes wandered around everything he saw. Wave Country was pretty desolate. This was prime territory for bandits and other undesirables to attempt an attack on wealthy travelers. The Wave Daimyo's court was another few hours away when Jiraiya called a lunch break in yet another small, rundown village. Naruto followed the diplomat off to his choice restaurant. Jiraiya said he'd return shortly, after taking care of some errands. The diplomat looked at each food option in the small village, and promptly rejected it. Naruto got a bit peeved. He wasn't in a big town. He could eat what they served, or he could stay hungry until they arrived at court. After 20 minutes of turning his nose up at what was available, the diplomat said he wasn't hungry. Naruto kept an eye on the man while he placed an order for sushi. While in Wave Country, he could enjoy really fresh fish, right? Jiraiya returned before Naruto claimed his order. He took one look at things, then went to a stand selling miso glazed chicken. Naruto watched the man sit at the counter and eat his meal, while the diplomat was simmering in anger over his self-induced hunger. Then Naruto watched a man at the stand strike up a conversation, and Jiraiya began to smile and his voice got louder, his boasting voice. What had got worthless teacher so interested? Since Naruto had turned the cold shoulder to him, the man hadn't said more than a few words, precisely the number of needed words, to anyone. Moody bastard. He almost gets someone killed and then he pouts about it. Naruto thanked the vendor and paid him for the sushi. Then he began to enjoy it, all the while keeping part of his attention on the silly-looking diplomat and the rest on the Jiraiya and his hand-waving conversation. Jiraiya finished his chicken, and continued to speak with the other man. Was this a guy a fan of perverted books? Eventually, Jiraiya got up and left. Ready. 10 minutes ago, the diplomat huffed. Naruto just nodded. With luck, we'll be there by nightfall. Naruto did not see Jiraiya's acquaintance get up from the chicken stand, or his hinge drop, or his red and black eyes spin to a stop, leaving only black pupils. Naruto did not know why this Uchiha was particularly interested in one of the teammates of the dead snake Sannin. Or how he had cast a genjutsu to force Jiraiya into craving miso glazed chicken. Naruto couldn't predict what was going to happen in the not too distant future as a consequence. Okay, bastard teacher. The mission to Wave is done. Now we have at least a week before we need to escort that annoying guy back. So, teach me something. Jiraiya looked at his student and frowned. I could teach you the hand signs for a dozen jutsu, and you could make them look good, but it would not give you the experience, the wisdom of how to use them, when to deploy them. No, our training together begins with a little exercise, a training exercise. I'm listening. Jiraiya had expected Naruto to be indignant about not being taught a technique. Maybe this boy was more mature than he seemed. Alright, this country was basically conquered and broken by a businessman named Gato. Rich guy owns ships and docks and warehouses and such, enough of them to basically buy the daimyo, that useless turd. Then this Gato died in a boating accident. When his body washed up on shore, his thugs discovered that Gato's legendary billions were a myth. He'd been spending every dime he made. That's usually when things go to shit: infighting, virtual civil war, blood in the gutters. Not this time. 3 of them decide to carve up what Gato did, this time to make money for themselves. If anything, things have gotten worse for the inhabitants of this country since Gato's death. That's a terrible story, worthless teacher. But what do you expect me to do? Jiraiya kept his tongue in check over the honorifics Naruto now bestowed on him. Your first training exercise is an assignment in intrigue. Destroy this Gato corporation so it can't rise from the grave again. You'll have to figure out how to do this. Get the information, figure out how to cripple it. Can't you be any more specific? Naruto asked, getting interested despite his irritation with Jiraiya. No, sometimes this is all you get from a client, what the end result looks like. A lot of them don't care about methods. You may choose to kill everyone who works for Gato Corporation, a rather messy solution, or to cause a public scandal over this for the daimyo, forcing him to act or lose his position in a power struggle, or maybe you'll destroy the Gato infrastructure, like the docks or the boats, that allow them to keep this place under their thumb. I can think of a dozen ways to do this. Jiraiya just smiled. But this is your task. Fix it. Simple. Naruto was nodding by the time Jiraiya was finished. It was a lesson in applied ninja skills. One could train to his heart's contentment, but if he couldn't think, he'd die in the field. This assignment was to hone Naruto's thinking capabilities, and to do a good deed. And it seemed to be bringing the boy out of his funk. Naruto began to walk away. Then his head whipped around. Don't forget what Sensei said. If I don't learn one of your techniques, you'll be stuck in Hidden Leaf for life. And, as Hokage, you'll have to maintain a good image at all time. No more dirty books. No more visiting bars every place you go. No more dating 16-year-old girls. You'll probably never leave the town again until you retire. Unless you cause a war or something, you worthless bastard. Jiraiya frowned. Maybe Naruto wasn't out of his funk.